Hi there and welcome to another PSD Tuts Plus spoon-fed Photoshop tutorial. I'm Gavin Steele, and in this tutorial we're going to take you through how to create a severed arm in Photoshop. And this is a great tutorial by Simon. Again, you can follow all of the steps over at psd.tutsplus.com, and all the files that we're going to use in this tutorial can all be found on the actual tutorial itself. So the first file that we're going to use in this tutorial is this one right here. And I'm just going to show you what I came up with first, just so we can see the kind of look that we're going for. And if I just zoom in, we can see we've got our severed arm here, and all these little veins joining up, these little links, stringy bits of our severed arm. So again, I'm going to bring back that other image. I'm going to minimize this one, just bring it down, and bring in our original image here. Okay, so I've made a couple of copies of this layer just so I've always got a backup I can come back to and either clone from or just use it for the general image. First thing we need to do is we're going to grab our pen tool and we're going to try and make a nice smooth selection around our arm. So Z on the keyboard is going to zoom me in, and back to P on the keyboard to my pen tool. I'm going to start just around here. Just try and create a nice smooth selection of the arm. Like so. And again, zoom in when you get into some of the trickier parts. Just trying to keep it nice and smooth. We can alt click on these little endpoints just to make sure we get a smooth finish. Okay, come down the fingers. Space on the keyboard is going to let you move around. Okay, it's getting a bit tricky on this fingertip. And in fact, the fingers, they don't actually matter too much. I'm going to go back another step there, because we're not really focusing on these end bits here. But just to try and stay smooth. Seem to be having a couple of issues with my Bamboo Wacom tablet. A little bit of a delay. Come around the fingertip. Okay. And let's zoom out. Okay, so there's our selection around our hand. Back to the pen tool. I'm going to right click, I'm going to make that a selection. I'm going to choose 0 for my feather radius, click on OK. I'm going to hit Command J on the keyboard, and we're going to make a new layer of just our arm. Now I'm going to duplicate that layer again a couple times, or I can just do it the once. I'm going to hide these, and I'm going to rename this layer arm. Okay, next thing that we need to do is we're going to use a clone tool, and we're just going to clone some of this sheet over our arm. So I'm going to turn this off. We're going to come back to this layer here. S on the keyboard should take you to the clone tool, or you can just click on it over here and make sure you've got clone tool selected and not the pattern stamp. So I'm just going to use Alt to select an area that I want to clone, and then I'm just going to click once on the area I want to cover up. So I'm going to select this area here and just keep selecting new sources. And because it's a crease sheet, it actually makes it easier and kind of tricking the eye into thinking that those creases would normally be there. Okay, if we just carry that down. That's fine. Okay, until we get something that looks like that. We can even use our heal brush to, we can just heal some of this area to try and match the colour. And bring in some of that creased area and so on. So you can play around with those settings until you get something that you're pretty happy with. I'm just going to go back to the clone tool, and I'm going to select some of this area up at the top, the light area, and just make sure, maybe with a bigger brush. Okay, that we get some of that, and then I'm going to go to the heal tool, and I'm going to select these creases down here, and just bring them into that light area, just so that when we cut out our arm, we'll see the creases through the gaps. Okay, that looks pretty good for now, that works for me. So I'm just going to bring back our arm. Yep, that all looks fine. Okay, so once we've cloned out the sheet, the next thing we need to do is reactivate our arm, and then we're going to add a layer mask to our arm layer. And that's going to be a reveal all layer mask. So reveal all. We're then going to grab our brush tool. We're going to make sure it's set nice and hard. We're going to play around with different sizes just to see the effect that we get. Make sure you're on black, and we're just going to basically cut out our arm. So I'm going to have one coming down here. Okay, that looks a pretty good size. I'm going to have another one just coming across the elbow joint. Something like so. One cutting back, and then one just before our wrist. There. Okay, that looks pretty good. Z on the keyboard, just zoom in, have a look at it at 50%. Yep, that's all going to work. Okay, next thing we need to do is we're going to bring in our meat. We need to cut it out. I've gone around mine with the pen tool. V on the keyboard, drag that straight in, and let's move that aside. And the key here is just make sure that the meat is the same size as the whole of the arm. So Command T, just going to angle it a little bit, make sure the whole arm's covered. That's fine. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to duplicate that layer again just to make sure that we've got a copy of it. We're going to use this one a little bit later on. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab this area here. It's a little bit too white, and we're going to clone this out. So S on the keyboard. Let's reduce the size of the brush with the open square bracket key. And I'm going to Alt on this darker area over here and just slightly come across like so, just to get rid of that area. And again, I'm going to alt click down here and maybe just get rid of some of this white area. Like so. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to make a mask on this layer. So head up to Layer, Layer Mask, and Reveal All. Sorry, Hide All. And then we can't see that layer. And then we're going to grab a soft brush and we're going to play around with our brush dynamics. So you need to bring up your brush tool like so. And then here you can see I've got textured set and I've selected the clouds texture. Everything else should be fine, 100%. Make sure you've got texture each tip. Mode set to color burn, 100%, 100%. Other dynamics is checked and smoothing is checked. And just move that to the side. And then I'm going to zoom in so we can see each of these joints. Grab our brush tool again. Change the color to white. And I'm going to reduce this down to about 20 and just run it along the edge here like so. And again, depending on how you want it to look, you might go for a thicker brush, somewhere like that, and then reduce the size of your brush, come down like so. Okay, and then this is the side that we're going to see most of the flesh, so the right hand side just needs to stay pretty slim and pretty thin. We just want to reveal just a little bit, so I'm going to grab a little slither like that. Okay, again increase for this side. Spacebar to move around. Tiniest little slither. That's it. Now remember, it's the brush that's making this look uneven and like kind of torn, as if the flesh has been torn. We can start to see our flesh coming through on these parts, which is really nice. Nice big bit in the middle here. Okay, move over to the wrist. Okay, probably a little bit too thin on that part. So because it's only a mask, we can go over it, we can bring it back, and so on. So X on the keyboard is going to change between black and white. Once we go back to black, we can bring back this area, and you can start again. X again takes us back to white, and we're just going to come along the edge. Like so. I'm going to get that little bit in there. Okay, let's zoom out and have a look. Okay, it's starting to look pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Next thing that we need to do is we're going to duplicate our meat layer. So I've already created a copy of that already. So make sure you've got a duplicated layer of that. The next thing that we need to do is we're going to bring our copy of our hand, so this layer down here, going to open that up, going to bring that to about here, and go to Layer, Layer Mask, Hide All, and then we're going to put a little mask on there, and we're going to bring back the shadow underneath the arm. I'm going to turn off my texture and my other dynamics for now. I'll bring them back on in just a second. Increase the size of my brush, and I'm just going to roughly just see the edge of the shadow there. Bring back the shadow. Like so. Just join that up, and then X to go black to black. Can increase the size of my brush, and then just slowly just bring that back so you just get that shadow. Okay, it looks pretty good. And again, oops, back to our brush tool. We need to make sure that we're going to come through here, and we're just going to lose that little bit of shadow through here. So let's take that out. It's a little bit too big. Okay, again, just a touch too big. Come down the side, through here. Okay, if we turn back on our other dynamics and our texture, we can now add just a little rough edge, like so, to our shadow. Just going to bring that back in. So our shadow doesn't look nice and smooth. It looks like it might actually be created by this fleshy, torn up part of the arm. Oops. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Yep, okay, next thing that we need to do is we're going to add our stringy bits down here. So we're going to turn on that copy of our meat layer. Going to bring that up to the top. Going to add a mask to that. Just going to quickly fill that mask with black. And we're going to bring in our stringy bits in a similar way to we did to the meat layer. So Z to zoom in. Let's zoom in on this upper part of the arm. Our brush tool. Bring it down, and we just create from meat to meat, sorry, from this like fleshy bit to fleshy bit, these little strings. Like so. Let's move down. Finally, our little wrist area. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now we're just going to adjust the levels in a second on our meat layer just to darken it a little bit, but we want to create a shadow for these layers here. If we command click on that layer, we're just going to get a selection for our little stringy bits. Create a new layer. We're going to fill that with black. Command deselect. We're going to move that underneath our layers. Let's bring that down to here. V on the keyboard. I'm just going to move this down just a couple, bring it over like so. Reduce the opacity down to about 50%, and I'm going to go to filter blur and just give it a 2 pixel Gaussian blur and click on OK, and it's going to tie that into our background a little bit. And you can darken that as well if you want, but I think overall that kind of ties that in pretty well. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is we're going to change the levels on our meat. So come back up to our meat layer here. We want these stringy bits to be a little bit darker. So it's this top layer here. We're going to go to Image, Adjustments and Levels, and we're going to set this to be 0, 0.64 and 255, and click on OK, and you can see it's just added, it's just darkened some of those just a little bit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come to excuse me, our burn tool on the left hand side, sorry, not blur, burn, and we're going to darken some of these meat layers. So set it to midtones, and then we're going to select first of all the meat layer down the side here, about 23% or 20% exposure. Just drag that down. Just going to darken some of these edges. Like so. Just maybe where the meat of the arm's been exposed. We're then going to grab our actual arm layer and we're going to set it to shadows, and again we're just going to come down here. Okay, that might be a little bit too much, it'll actually look like the skin's been burnt, so just come down, give it a couple of strokes just to, you know, colour it a little bit. Like so. Okay, and then we're going to add a new layer at the top, hue and saturation. We're going to set the saturation down to -100 and set it to soft light. And that's going to add our effect. Now, if you want to make it a little bit more realistic, we can play around with our shadows layer, this layer here. And again, we can bring back some of the opacity in those, just move them down, V on the keyboard, give a bit of distance, but when we zoom out, we've got a pretty cool looking severed arm. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial, nice quick one this week, and again, thanks again to Simon for all of the steps over at psd.tutsplus.com. I've been Gavin Steele, and I hope you enjoyed that tutorial.